this, and we're recording. It is another Black Tower podcast episode. It is a time for reflection. It is a time of weekly internalization.
Is it a time of turmoil in the galaxy?
Maybe
the best of times, the worst of times.
it could also be one of those.
Oh man. How did that happen? How did I make a Star Wars reference where Josh didn't? And then Andrew just coming in with just like, hey guys, can we elevate this? This is
Just
unacceptable.
a tiny bit.
We need to get
Yeah,
warm.
Carrie's already.
Yeah.
We're joined tonight.
I start up here, and as the taint goes down, then it goes from like literary analysis to like just drunk babble.
Dick jokes.
Daniel, give us our intro.
Excellent. Glad to do so. Hi, everybody. You are here because you stumbled upon us, and I don't know how you did that. It's very odd. Sorry about that, but I can tell you you're going to have fun. So, there's that. We are the Black Tower Podcast, a Wheel of Time podcast. So if you haven't read the Wheel of Time, that's actually okay for this episode here.
Well,
It's crazy. No, it is.
Okay.
It is. Okay. If you have ever asked someone about the Wheel of Time and gotten an answer of this is what the Wheel of Time is about, you can listen to this episode of this show. Unfortunately, most of them you can't, but this one you can. And that is because we are doing something very special tonight. But before we get into that, we should probably introduce who we are and then introduce why it is that this episode is going to be special. So I am your Amin Khan Mahale, the flag-waving, song-singing, drum-beating Mahale who leads us into battle from the back of the pack, playing lots of loud trumpets. You're Daniel Mahale.
I prefer to imagine you at the head of the bagpipe corps.
There you yeah. Yes.
Well, I'm your Vajan Mahale. I'm the one that they stick at the front of the people going into battle because they're like, hey, you lead the battles, have fun. So yeah, plenty of scars. Yeah, it hurts. I'm like the minesweeper in front of the rest of the convoy. I just step on all the mines.
No,
my name is Andrew.
We are the one we're confident enough in to put at the front of the battle because we're pretty sure you're gonna come out of.
I am your Sorovan Mahale, and tonight I'm getting twisted because everything is just peachy. I'm getting twisted tonight.
Yeah.
It's gonna be awesome. My name is Josh, and I'm the one that they leave back in the barracks. Not because they actually want me to guard anything, but because they're afraid I'm going to mess it up on the battlefield. So they're like, we need you here.
You're the weatherman. You're combat weather.
He's the weatherman.
You're combat weather.
He doesn't call the storms or the lightning. He just tells us when it's going to happen.
Like, guys, don't worry. In this battle, we've got a high of 73 degrees Fahrenheit today. You'll be fine.
So, you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? I'm so glad
such a stupid line. Stupid line.
I'm excited to see somebody FAFO with a twisted T and find out the way you're supposed to with twisted T rather than the smacked in the face way.
Right. There you go. All right, guys. Tonight we have a very special episode because, as I said earlier, most of our episodes are full spoiler episodes. They deal with the entire breadth of the Wheel of Time series because the three Mahales at the Black Tower have read the entire series. And we find it very fun to talk about things that stretch the entire length, because Robert Jordan is actually incredibly good throughout the book series of doing things like callbacks and building foundations early for things that happen later and having a through line through all of his books. However, we do also very much appreciate the beginnings, the early books, the ones where we didn't have any idea what was going to happen next, the ones that got us into the series, the ones that made us super excited about this, about getting further in, all of that good stuff. And so we have invited one of our friends and first-time readers, Karri. Say hi.
Hi, guys.
To sort of bring us back to our roots, bring us back to the beginning, bring us back to when we were first-time readers, and just talk a little bit through sort of what your thoughts are, remind us of all that nostalgia that we had when we were still on book one, and really just make us incredibly jealous because we can never have that moment again, but that we are excited for you to have. So, Karri, tell
Remind
us
us
a
of
little
a
bit
time
about...
where we didn't have bills, please.
Right. Kind of true. So, Karri, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about where you are in the book series, and then we'll move on into sort of just your thoughts as you are where you are in the series.
Okay, I'm Karri. I am the WotCon cheerleader on Twitter.
You
Super
do an amazing
excited.
job, by the way.
Super excited. That's coming up. And by the way, if you're a first-time reader, you can actually listen to the Black Tower podcast episode where they talk about WotCon because it's spoiler-free.
That is also accurate. I
That
think
was
we're
a
up to
very
like...
nice episode. So
Yeah, I feel like we're up to
Good.
like 10 episodes that are spoiler free, but it's also out of like 150, 200 episodes at this point. So it's
Yeah.
not a large percent. It's just a surprisingly large number of them.
Let's see. Some more things about myself. I have two lovely
cute-
kids.
I was gonna say at
Um,
least one cute kid.
I started something on Twitter, hashtag Wheel of Time with Kids. If you follow that, you will find a lot
Nice.
of funny things that my kids say as it pertains to Wheel of Time. Kind of like kids say the darnest thing, but it's Wheel of Time
Mhm.
related.
Nice.
So my daughter, for example, said something really funny a while back where she's like, "Mommy, it's not Aes Sedai, it's Aes Sedai." Like she was correcting my pronunciation. It's like, where does she come up with this stuff? Um,
Already a member of the fandom. Perfect.
Yep,
Oh, yeah.
So-
she's there. She's got it.
and one time, she likes to read. Sometimes she likes to say, "Can I read part of your book to you as a bedtime story?" I'm like, okay. So she'll like open up. This is back in Eye in the World. She was like reading 2 pages, and it was all a description of like a horse stable, and like nothing big was happening. It was just descriptions of like settings and horses and stuff. I'm like, okay, thank you, RJ. You're very overly descriptive on some of your stuff. But one time she asked me, "Hey, can I read tonight?" And I said, "No, I'm kind of at that chapter in Fires of Heaven, that one with the snow and the igloo. Like, no, you can't read that one out loud."
Yeah, that's gonna be
So
a
I
problem.
said, not tonight, honey. So
It's a little
um,
far fetched for you to read.
when I'm not reading Wheel of Time, I'm doing martial arts. I started that about a year ago. My kids started about a year and a half ago.
Nice.
So I love Kung Fu. I also do a little bit of Tai Chi.
Nice.
And it keeps me out of trouble.
So you and
So-
Jason Denzel should have a talk because Jason Denzel is also a black belt
Oh God, I have a
level
long
practitioner.
a long ways to go before I'm anything like that.
Can I just say I love there's a commercial out, and it's really dorky commercial. I think it's for like the NAACP or AARP or something. And it talks about like how kids need to think about retirement so much more because we live longer, and so more of your life can be spent in retirement. And there's this moment where this younger woman, or this like young girl, not even just younger woman, like young girl who's like 8, is doing Tai Chi with this like 65, 70-year-old woman. And she just goes, "This is just slow-mo karate." And the older woman goes, "Yep, just slow-mo karate." I thought it was the most hilarious description of Tai Chi. It was great.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah, that's very
So, okay. I feel bad. I have to yell at my kids. Ollie,
No.
go upstairs now. Go. Get out of here.
Josh also does that because he's the other one of us who has kids. So you are.
Okay,
You're totally
fine. I'm currently on book 6, Lord of Chaos.
Yes.
And I take my books everywhere I go. Like at work every day, even if I don't get a chance to read it, I just it's like a comfort thing. I like to have them next to me.
Mhm.
So with the intent that someday I'll have time on my lunch break to actually read, it's time. So I had this on my desk, and yesterday my coworker saw it, and she's like, "Oh, I love those Harlequin romance novel covers." And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is not a romance novel."
Oh, Daryl K.
I mean,
Sweet.
but it also kind of is, though. Like, if we're being honest, like,
Seriously, like, really? What were they thinking?
yeah.
So I'm kind of a unique first-time reader. I started in the late 90s. I was on a trip visiting some cousins, and the boy cousins sat me around the kitchen table. One of them was off on the side reading Fires of Heaven. I still remember that. And the other 2 boy cousins were giving me like a sales pitch. "Hey, we want to tell you about this book series." Like with the arms moving all around, like giving me vocab words like what an Aes Sedai is, or like the magic, the creatures, like giving me the premise of
The
the book.
411, yeah.
Excuse me, Carrie. Do you have time to talk about our Lord and Savior, the Dragon Reborn?
So something sparked in me at that point. I said, "Yeah, I'm kind of a fantasy loving nerd. I think I'll read this book. It can't be any different from any other book I read, right?" So I went back. I think I was junior or senior in high school at the time. I went back, I started reading, and then I got all the way up to book 4. I was literally halfway through book 4
Mhm.
when life happened. I was in college, stuff got busy, and then for
Mhm.
whatever reason, I stopped reading. But
Mhm.
I put it on my shelf. At that point, I started to collect all the books. So I literally started to collect all the books. I love going to used bookstores, and it's like the fun of the hunt to find a book. I don't want to just order it. No, I want to go to a bookstore and randomly find it. Like it's
Mhm.
funner that way.
Yes.
So I slowly built up my collection. Even though I haven't read
Yes.
those books, I was
Feel
like,
the
this is the best.
collector flow through you.
This is the best fantasy series ever, which is silly for me to say because I hadn't even finished it at that point. But it stayed on my shelf. Several years passed, and then finally, you know, that's when I found the fandom. I saw a trailer for a new TV show called The Wheel of Time, and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? So then I Googled, I'm sure my friends can relate. I Googled Wheel of Time on YouTube, and that's when I discovered some of the big content creators like Daniel Green, Nablus, the Dusty Wheel. And from there, it branched off into everybody else, like Unraveling the Pattern, the Black Tower, like everybody. And then at that point, I got excited to pick up the series again after several years.
Mhm.
But I'm a rebel. I started with New Spring. I love New Spring. I've read it twice. I love the backstory between Moraine and Lan. You don't get enough of
Yes.
that in the main series, at least early on. I don't know if it ever picks up at some point, but for up until book 6.
I appreciate that you recognize that that's a possibility. And I
There's-
will not ruin whether it does or does not
Okay.
happen.
So for me, it gave me a good backstory of some of the main characters, and
Mhm.
anything related to the girls being in the tower, that's kind of like some of my favorite chapters to read as a whole. especially in the Dragon Reborn when you talk about them going through their testing and all that. I love that. Some of my favorite parts. But I do have a Taviran story for you, kind of like a side comment to my origin story.
Yes.
Many years ago.
So
when I
hold
was,
on, Karri, just really quick before we go into that, I want to make sure that we do this right. Earlier, I said that this was going to be a fully spoiler-free episode because I didn't actually realize quite how far you were into the book series. So I'm going to go to my co-hosts really quick. Do we want to spoiler this up to a certain point, or do we want to make sure that we actually keep this down completely spoiler-free for the most part?
No. We partial spoilers.
Okay, so do we want to do it? Do we want to cut it at the end of Fires of Heaven into Lord of Chaos?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, cool.
yeah.
So awesome. Let's go ahead.
There's
and do
your
that.
spoiler warning, listeners.
Yes, if you are continuing to listen after this point, you may be spoiled to everything up to the last page of Fires of Heaven. So please definitely keep listening. And I'm 100% sure we are like pretty soft spoilers. So if you're okay with soft spoilers, you're probably okay here. But if you are 100% against spoilers and you haven't read past Fires of Heaven, or if you haven't read past Eye of the World into the other books, and you are hard against spoilers, probably bow out now. If you've read all the way up to Fires of Heaven, you are perfectly safe. Awesome. So sorry, Karri.
Okay.
Continue, please.
Okay, so here's my little Taviran story,
Mhm.
kind of a side comment to my origin. So back when I was in college and I was on the Great Hunt, so obviously book 2, I was at the airport one day, and you know those long line of chairs that they have that you sit on while you wait at your gate and you're waiting for your plane to arrive. So I was there sitting, reading a book. I was traveling back home to California, and I can't remember where my origin flight was. It was either Dallas or Michigan. I can't remember. I can't remember who I was dating at the time. Sorry. So
Yep.
anyways, I'm there reading my book. And you know, back then, before you find the fandom, you feel like, oh my God, I'm the only person that likes this series. Like there's no other fans out there. It's just me. So this lady walks by and she kind of like doesn't sit directly across from me, but she sits like 1 or 2 chairs across from me, opposite me. And I look over because she has a book in her hand, and I look over and I'm smiling and I'm smirking. And I looked up at her and I said, "Hey, nice book." She was reading Eye of the World. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Nice.
And then listen to this. We get on the airplane and she literally is sitting next to me on the plane.
Nice.
And we were sitting side by side. She was reading her Eye of the World. I was reading my Great Hunt. We didn't really talk that much, but I was still in awe that, oh my God, I can't believe somebody else likes these books. And so whoever you are, friendly lady, I'm curious if you ever finish the series, don't even know where you are or if you're in the fandom, or did you just give up? I don't know. So I thought that was kind of a cool story.
That first off, that is an awesome story.
Yes.
And I will say that I am like, okay, you know, there's like a psychological thing that humans have a hard time with like large quantities, right? Anytime you start saying 1 million, 1 billion, 1 trillion, it goes
just
from
all
being
sounds like the same
quantifiable. Yeah. It goes from being a quantifiable. I know if I put 6 cookies in my hand, I can gauge that relatively well, as opposed to having 20 cookies in my hand. But
it's a small number to not
when
be
you
able
start
to gauge
talking
anymore,
about lots and lots of people or lots and lots of quantities, you know, it gets really difficult to sort of quantify in your brain. So I go to Jordan.
Where you're going with this, yeah.
And there's a couple thousand people that go to JordanCon, right? Cool. We go to WotCon, and I think there was
about 1,000 at JordanCon both years that we went.
I thought it was closer to 2.
No, we've never sold the maximum tickets that JordanCon can sell is 1,200. Again, this is totally I'm just being pedantic,
yeah.
but also
Point being,
I know what
there's
I'm
a lot of
doing.
people at JordanCon. There's a
Yes.
lot of people at WotCon,
Mhm.
and I'm still surprised at how often, because I mean, now as you know, as someone who has a podcast, I go out looking for
Mhm.
Wheel of Time fans because I want to, like, you know, introduce them to the fandom and increase our numbers. And I am surprised. I am genuinely surprised at how many people to this day have read the books and just kind of go, I'm an island. I'm the only one I know who's read these books. And I've accepted that. I've accepted that I am the only one who's read these books in real life. I know I was like that for a very long time. Like, I knew Dragonmount existed, but they were mostly on forums, and I had a hard time with forums, man. I just couldn't, like, they just don't click with my brain. And then, you know, of course, I heard about JordanCon, and I was like, that sounds cool. I don't know if that's going to be a thing for very long or not, but maybe I'll go one day. And so I like that you found someone in the wild and at an airport, because like I too remember that magic feeling when you find someone in the wild for the first time. And I remember I had a black jacket on, and it was Halloween, so I put my sword and dragon pin on, and I was like, low effort, high quality, deep cut Halloween costume. And I was wandering around, and someone was like, hey, keep that madness in check. And I was like,
yeah.
you know what I am? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, oh my God.
Well, I love what you're sort of Josh is bringing up here, because it's definitely one of those things where I think all of us here on this podcast have very much the experience of, until the TV show came out, and even still to a certain extent after, books are something that a lot of people seem to feel very island on, unless they're actively coming out in your lifetime, and then even that. Because I felt like a lot of, like, I didn't talk about the Lord of the Rings books very much with anyone until the movies came out. And then once the movies came out, I found out that I wasn't alone, and a lot of people had actually read the books. But I didn't really talk about the books with people until I started referencing the movies. And then they were like, oh, well, that's not in the books, or like blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, wait, you've read the books? And they'd be like, yeah. And again, to Josh's point, in some ways, I just looked it up, in 2014, which is the closest number that I can get, the global sales of the Wheel of Time books are upwards of 80 million copies sold. Now, granted, even if you go ahead and divide that by 14 books, that's still over 12 million people who presumably have these books and own them. Now, granted, again, that's a huge number. It's also a relatively small number of the population, because the population of the world is like 7 billion people. And again, now we're getting into those numbers that Josh talked about of being so high that they're kind of like, I don't really have a scale for that. But again, that means that there are presumably 12 million people running around who could recognize what's going on. Now, I do also recognize that that doesn't mean that everybody's actually read the books that they have on their bookshelf. That also doesn't mean that that it doesn't count people who have bought multiple copies of the books because they like this printing and that printing. And I get that, and I appreciate that. But again, even at all of those things being true, and it only being closer to like 1 million people, that's still 1 million people who are running around having read this series. Like, that's a lot of people, even though it's still like a small percentage. That's still so many humans.
It is a lot of peeps.
Yeah, anyway.
So, continuation of my story.
Yes,
So
please
you're
do.
gonna fast forward several years, and it turns out my older brother had read the series all the way through, And what was interesting to me that I didn't know at the time, his wife, my sister-in-law, is an avid Wheel of Time fan. Like she rereads the series every year. And so
Oh,
when I went
wow.
to go
Nice.
visit them 2 years ago, and I think he lives in Colorado. So we went to go visit him, and then he said, "Oh yeah, here's my wife's books all on the shelf." And I'm like, "Wait, she's a Wheel of Time fan? Like what? Like how come I didn't know this? Like all these years?" And so I got her actually into watching the Dusty Wheel. It's so funny. Like sometimes she's in chat. She's like, "Hey sis," and I'm like, "Hey." I'm like, "Oh my god, I can't believe my family's actually in here." Like it's just. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if I should say this, but I will just because. She submitted a Watt Idol parody this year. She surprised me. I didn't
Nice.
know, but she had the creepy one, the one that was very
Ah.
creepy.
Oh,
The mask and the tainted dagger. I don't know what she was doing. But anyways, she's getting ideas for next year's, so we'll see.
Nice.
But
you say they live in
Colorado.
yeah.
Colorado, so
Yeah.
they should come to the Gathering Madness.
Where's the Gathering Madness?
It's going to be in Utah. It's in
Oh, yeah.
October.
This year's they're always incredible, but this year's is going to be next
Pretty
level
epic.
incredible.
Yeah.
So
So
back
sorry.
to the
Yeah.
I'm my thoughts are kind of all over the place, but
Excellent.
We
when
don't know
I
what that's
picked-
like at all.
You fit in
I'm-
very well. here.
I'm improving, okay. So
Again,
picked up
you
the
fit in
books
very
again-
well here.
when I picked up the books again and I reread it, I wanted to get to the part where I left off the first time many years ago. And I was like, I know I read somewhere in book 4. I don't know how far I read, but I'm just waiting for that moment when I realize, oh my God, I finally got past that point that I couldn't finish the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a big deal for me. So I finally realized where that point was. Spoiler alert, Shadow Rising. I was literally at the part, I stopped reading right when Rand arrived in that Aiel Waste and he was about to enter Ruidian. And I'm like, oh my God, I stopped right at the best part of the book.
No way.
And I had no idea.
Yeah.
Because that's the part that everybody is crazy over. I didn't know. So when
It's one of the best parts. Yeah.
when I read the book again,
I said one
all
of.
the way, when I read the book again all the way through, I felt so embarrassed, like, oh my God, this is the book I stopped at. And I realized in the fandom, this is a lot of people's favorite book, and I kind of like stopped reading in it. So, once I got past that, then I went into Fires of Heaven, and it was like new territory for me.
The
Yeah.
real best book.
I can't really tell you guys what my favorite book is. I'll probably get some
Well, I mean,
whiplash.
again, I was gonna say, it's a little hard to say until you finish the book series. I mean, you can
Yeah.
say of the ones I've read, X is
Yeah.
my favorite book, but it's certainly in no way not that it doesn't count until you finish the series, but it's without having a full set of information.
Mhm.
It always feels a little lackluster to go ahead and say this is my favorite book. My favorite book so far is like the closest, but like, yeah.
Yes.
Josh, remind me, do you have a favorite book? Have we talked about what is your favorite book?
Okay, so my favorite book is Winter's Heart for reasons.
Understood.
And
Oh, it's because
But-
they do the thing about the thing with the thing.
yeah,
that will have a
oh,
thing.
with the
Yep.
people in person,
Yeah.
Yep.
and then the stuff happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember
It's the
that.
first time we see Batman. Like the Dark
Thanos
Knight.
pops in, snaps
Yeah.
his fingers. That son of a bitch.
I have a
okay,
Winter's Heart
cool.
story
I like
really quick for you.
Uh-oh.
So I
You
was at
shouldn't
the-
supposed to
have
have a
a
Winter's
Winter's
Heart
Heart
story.
story.
No, listen to me. So now that I've reestablished myself in the community and, reading again, I've started to find more people in the wild, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was at my car dealership once, several months ago, getting my car, or, whatever, oil change, whatever. And I go set my book down on the counter to go pay. And the service guy that I've known for years, by the way, 10 plus years, he looks at my book and he's like, oh, I read one of those. And I said, which one did you read? He said, oh, I read Winter's Heart. I'm like, you started by reading
What?
Winter's Heart? He says, in his defense, he was a teenager at the time. He went to the bookstore, saw a nice cover, and said, hey, I want to read that. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I
Yep.
challenged him, go back and start from the beginning.
Oh my God.
No, I've never actually done that before, but I've like been this close to doing that so many times. Of the like, you go in and it's in like the new releases and it looks cool, so you pick up the book and you're like, oh man, I should probably read this. And then you realize right before like you actually make the decision that you're going to go buy it, that it's book 5 of a series. And you're like, oh, I am very glad that I did not try to start on book 5 of a series.
I mean, that's where I kind of count my lucky stars, because the first real fantasy series or whatever that I ever read was Harry Potter.
Mhm.
And I resisted it for the longest. I was like, I'm not going to read it. I'm not that interested in the premise. And Mom was like on the third or fourth book.
Sure.
And I was like, well, okay, fine. I'll just start reading where you are to see if I like it. And she was like, no, you got to start at the beginning. And at the time I was like, okay, fine. And it took a little bit of getting into, but
Sure.
I'm thankful that it did. Because now, like, if I pick up a series, I'm definitely going to start at the beginning, even if it's like rulingly painful to get through the first book or two or whatever it may be.
And some of them are.
Yeah, it's
because
it's invaluable.
Harry Potter Sorcerer's Stone is not written super well. Neither is the like first book of the Inheritance series, Aragon, not written super well. But by the time you get to the end, they've grown a lot as writers.
Yeah. I mean, you can also try starting like this really niche series called Mystic. Pretty decent.
Yeah, I hear the author's a pretty cool dude too.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. I hear he's like a black belt in
Wheel
martial
of
arts.
Time memorabilia.
Yeah.
But, I will say this. For those of you who don't know, Jason Denzel has officially retired from Dragonmount.
Oh.
It was a little bit, he posted a thing on Facebook about it, and it was bittersweet. But he was like, it's been 25 years since they launched Dragonmount, and he's got his own book series, the Mystic book series, which is a trilogy series. It's really, really great. Super unique plot lines, like really cool. So check those out. But he passed over, he handed over Dragonmount to someone else, and he's moving on with his career and his life.
That makes
which I
sense.
thought was kind of cool. So shout out to Jason Denzel. You're awesome, sir.
Indeed.
Friend of
Sorry,
the
Andrew,
channel.
you were saying.
Yeah, and I interrupted Andrew.
Oh no, you're fine. That's good to know, because I honestly I didn't know that. As many people know, I'm not like, I'm on social media, but I'm not on social media that much anymore.
Yeah.
I think the most social media interaction I get is the random like Snapchats from like Josh or whoever.
That sounds about right.
And Discord messages, until I get tired of Discord and delete it off my phone for a day or two. So many notifications sometimes. But yeah, no, I mean, what were we talking about before I started talking?
Winter's
I was
Heart.
going to go off.
I have a few more in the wild stories to share.
Would love to hear those.
Okay, I just wanted to...
when you remember, Andrew, sound off.
Indeed.
Okay, so the Lights Work podcast has an episode where they talk about is the Watt fandom a cult? And the funny things that take place in that episode are I feel like I'm like a total evangelist towards Watt. I don't know why, but I love sharing it with people. So I was at work one day, and as you know, I like to put my book on my desk just to have it as a comfort thing. One time the vice president of the company came over to talk to me about something, and he looks at my book and he's like, oh yeah, Wheel of Time. I read about 6 of those. And I'm like, what? Like, seriously? And then I found out he likes Sanderson, so he was reading a Sanderson book. And meanwhile, this guy in engineering is like reading a different Sanderson book. And I'm like, what about the Wheel of Time? Like, come on. Like, And so this one guy's like, yeah, my sister-in-law is really into it. I'm like, well, hook me up. I can invite her to WotCon. Like, she's local, right? Like, tell me about her. And then he's like, yeah, I started reading The Wheel of Time and I'm in the Great Hunt and I just, I'm kind of like stuck. And anyways, after a couple conversations with him, I checked back with him and he's like, yeah, I finally finished it. It was really good. So it's like I love to inspire people and be their cheerleader. And the funny thing is
That's
I'm still
awesome.
going through this myself. So it's just kind of, I guess I'm doing the life's
Excellent.
work.
Well, I love
in
that.
the workplace.
Yeah, I love that sort of like symbiotic thing of being someone else's cheerleader is often a pretty good way of being your own cheerleader. And so again, given that you are, because it's easy for somebody who's finished the books to be like, oh yeah, you should read it. Because they're already done. Like they've finished the marathon. So of course they're telling you to do a marathon. But it is definitely, in my humble opinion, very different to have somebody still being involved with their reading and things like that, saying like, no, keep going. It's still really fun. It's still really good. It's still really exciting. Like, I'm still in the throes of it. And I'm telling you, like, that it's fun and that you should continue, especially because, again, I mean, not to rehash lots of other things that we've said on lots of other episodes, the slog is nicknamed that for a reason. It's not the most exciting parts of the book, and there's some truth in the fact that there's a lot of events that are happening simultaneously, so it's kind of like you read multiple books for one time frame. But of course, when it comes right down to it, the reason that it got that nickname was because you were waiting years for a not super exciting set of circumstances. And so again, like, sort of having
Feels like
somebody...
me looking at turning 30 this year.
Right.
I did years for a not exciting set of circumstances.
You're not wrong. Continue. But yeah, so definitely having somebody in the middle of the slog or something like that, just still being excited about being like, hey, you should keep reading the books, please. Like, it's still fun, it's still exciting, I'm still having a good time. Like, you're not quite where I am, but I'm not just like looking at you from the mountaintop being like, keep climbing, motherfucker. Like
From
it's a
the
different
top, make it
feeling.
drop.
That's
and
a
so
what? That's a what?
yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. Sure, let's go with that.
Now get
but
up, bookmark, Anna.
One of the things I love though is like those in the wild moments, other than like obviously dedicated Wheel of Time events. I have run into Wheel of Time fans in the absolute most random of places.
Like the person who does service on your car.
Yeah.
No, sorry, that
yeah.
was Karri's story.
I had to think because so like my first year working where I work now, I was over in a warehouse section right next to a metal fab shop on base, and I'm sitting there trying to help these guys get their computers working because like their scanners broke or whatever. And one of the guys came back from lunch and he was sitting there, he's like, oh, how's it going? And he like just pointed at my arm and he was like, you're a Wheel of Time fan. And I was like, yeah, a little bit. And so we got to talk about that. And then yeah, you could say that. All the way up until like the last weekend of April when I did the anniversary trip with Maya to Hilton Head, walking around like this whole shopping kind of center outside at Caligny Beach. And we go into like this custom candle shop where they make like all kinds of thematic candles. Like there was anime candles. There were Studio Ghibli candles. Now there was like a NASCAR candle. I'll have to get Maya to send me pictures of the Star Wars candles I bought her. Because they're pretty dope. But we go to check out and the lady at the desk is like, oh, Wheel of Time. So it's always been in the most random of places. But you also get to see like Karri was talking about kind of evangelizing for the Wheel of Time series. I turned at one point 90% of my office into Wheel of Time readers. My boss at the time was just bought Eye of the World. Our printer and video telecom specialist guy, he's still reading the books. One of the guys that left and went back to California now, he's just started reading the books. Then I had another buddy or another coworker that he actually finished the whole series, and his was the most fun because as he would go through different things, he would, obviously ask questions because he knew I read the books and knew a little bit about the books at least. And just watching his reaction at different points in the series, whenever like exciting stuff happened or crazy stuff happened, or the really messed up stuff would happen, and he'd just be like, "What the hell, man?" I'm just like,
What have you done?
yeah. It was a lot of fun, and there is something still kind of like not morbidly, but kind of like Schadenfreudery enjoyable about being able to look at somebody and be like, "Oh, just Raffo."
Yep.
It's like, it feels like, or it sounds like you're just withholding information, but in the end, I don't think I've met anybody that was, really that upset after they read and found out whatever it was. After being told like, "Hey, trust me, just read it and you'll find out like here soon."
I remember.
I think the most I would
as a
tell them was
first-
like, "Hey, man, in 5 chapters you'll figure out the answer."
I remember as a first time reader getting Raffoed left and right, and it was so. It was like, oh my God, I wasn't ever like mad about it. It's not like I was mad, but it was just like, oh, I need to know now.
I'll never forget the first question he asked me was he was like, "What's the difference between Murdral, Halfman, and the Eyeless?" And I'm like,
It's the same.
Nothing.
"There's nothing. They're the same thing." And he's like, "Oh, okay."
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's kind of a valid question, really.
I mean, no, like it was absolutely fair. And I laughed because I remember reading the first book and being like flipping back and forth, being like, "Okay, these are the same thing."
Hey man, can you tell me why they have 12 names for one thing?
Yeah. There
So-
was one point in the books where he asked me, he was like, he was asking a question. He's like, "I can't remember the Aes Sedai's name. It started with an S." And I just stared at him. I was like,
Nope.
"Bruh."
Nope.
But I was like,
all
"Well,
right.
it narrows it down from 2,700 to 1,300 or so." But
Nope.
Maybe.
So Karri, let me ask you this.
Let
just,
me
just to
ask
get everybody
you a
caught up.
question.
You just started Lord of Chaos, right? Because as you had specified earlier in the episode, just as a
And it has a
refresher
long
here.
ass prologue. I'm still in it.
A long ass prologue where you get to meet some cool people. And let me ask you this: up until where you are, what is like your like the most significant scene, or the most like impactful scene, the scene that made you gasp, the scene that's your favorite, the scene that you think of a lot? Like, is there a part of the story in the books that you keep coming back to?
I mean, I think each book has its own moment. It's hard to pick just
100%.
one. Like I mentioned, Dragon Reborn. I love the sequence with the girls going through their testing, through the, what is it? Terang. I can't say this.
Terangrial.
Tongue twister. That was memorable for me from that book. Shadow Rising. Okay, first of all, let's get this out of the way. Matt is my favorite character. The part with him, Matt.
Oh,
So,
yes.
Matt going to, oh yeah, by the way, in case you don't know, spoilers, guys, again, Shadow Rising. Matt going to Viridian and going through the doorway, the twisted doorway.
Ooh.
That was a pretty cool moment for me because Matt is so awesome. He's flawed, he's stupid, but he's so lovable, and I don't know how to explain that. Other people are standoffish by him, but I just love him more for that goofiness.
at least
He's like the
kinky.
comic relief.
I have a friend.
Just
who
look at how his
stopped
trip to
reading the
Viridian went.
books.
He's pretty kinky. So I like it.
I have a friend who stopped reading the books because she could not stand Matt, and
See?
could not get past it, and was like, "I hate this kid," and just stopped reading. And I was like, ah. But anyway,
Again, depending on where they were, I can understand it, but also no.
So
Go ahead.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
cheating here. I have lots of moments. In the Shadow Rising, there's obviously more than one, right? So you have
Mhm.
the twisted doorway, Matt going through. You have the backstory of the whole the Aiel and how they came about, how they evolved from the traveling people. I mean, my mind was blown. Like I had no idea the concept of the Way of the Leaf originated from this, and that was huge. And also my favorite part of the Shadow Rising, I don't know, everybody has a different favorite part, but I loved the Perrin story arc where he went back to the Two Rivers, and the part about him uh, talking about all the people in the neighborhood, this person, that person, that I don't know how to explain it. It was just so awesome. It was
Yes.
one of my favorite parts. It was his story arc. And once I got to his story arc, he had several chapters and several point of views, which disappeared in Fires of Heaven. Like, what the heck? Where's my parent? Like he's gone.
Oh, don't worry. You gonna get some Perrin.
So
I love that you brought up Fires of Heaven, though, specifically to Perrin's
I
storyline back
always
in the
love
Two Rivers.
when people bring up Fires of Heaven.
oh, I haven't gotten to the Fires of Heaven yet. This
Or
is
not
just
Fire.
Shadow
I
Rising.
meant
Yeah.
Shadow Rising. That's the
Yeah.
one. Sorry.
Well,
Oh.
but she brought up Fires of Heaven in terms of Perrin is not nowhere to be found, but he is much less involved in
Yes.
Fires of Heaven than he is in
When-
Shadow Rising.
When so Shadow Rising, she's on Shadow Rising,
Mhm.
and she's reading, and, and I get a message from her today. It goes, "Wait, what the fuck? Did Perrin's family really just get murdered by white cloaks?" And I was like,
Off screen.
yes.
Yeah.
To add insult to
Yeah.
injury, off screen.
Yeah. And that was such a hard scene. Like it's just so gut wrenching, and you're absolutely right, Carrie. Like Perrin, man, he shines through that whole bit of story, and just having that conversation. I'm glad you brought this part up, because like having that conversation with my friend in real life here, reminds me of that and everything that he's sort of accomplished in that little bit. And wow, just wow.
And
Powerful
back to
stuff.
Going back to the Two Rivers for the first time since you read Eye of the World, you're reintroduced to these characters that you haven't seen in books, like several books. And seeing those familiar faces again, it's like a homecoming. And I don't know, I love the parts where they talk about food. So like when they have like a nice home cooked meal at the inn or whatever, I just love that. And of course their food gets interrupted by some, oh crap, something is going on. I gotta
Always.
go get up and take care of something. But those are some of my favorite moments from the Shadow Rising. Now Fires of Heaven is a different story. I struggled with this book a little bit. It took me longer to read this one than it did Shadow Rising for some reason. And I don't know if it was just because life got busy or certain parts of the book I felt like were sluggish a little bit. But then, man, when you get to like 75% through the book and Rand is about to descend upon that city, I'm probably going to say it wrong, Kyrian?
Karian?
Even Matt from the Dusty Wheel says it wrong. It's okay.
And so when he's about to descend on the city, and then Matt is trying to leave, and he's like, I think I gotta go now. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be involved with you anymore. I just gotta go. Like, I've had enough of this weirdness being around you all this time. So he leaves, and then you have this whole sequence where he goes off and he sees some people who are about to be killed because the battle is going a certain direction, and he's like, no, I gotta help these people. And when he meets Talmanes, I mean, I was like reading like crazy, like, oh my god, this is so good, I love this part. So I really love that. It's partly because I'm biased because I love Matt, and that was a good section for Matt in the book. Now, given being part of the fandom is difficult because of spoilers. Going to live streams,
Mhm.
you go at your own risk.
Mhm.
Sometimes live streams start off spoiler free and then they eventually go full book spoilers. And
Mhm.
it's a struggle to be a first time reader and participate actively in the fandom. So
Yes.
sometimes I get spoiled a tiny bit here and there, like, okay, so and so is going to go through a doorway with a Forsaken, but I didn't have the context of when or how that was going to happen. Or so and so is going off in the snow to some igloo with someone and they're going to have a relationship. I'm like, okay, that's weird. I don't know how that's going to come about, but okay. But when you finally get to those parts, it's still like a surprise, even though you know a tiny bit about it, it's still a surprise because you now have context for how and why it's happening. And it still feels special. Um, Now I started, one thing I didn't mention yet is I started doing the audiobooks about a year ago to help supplement my reading.
Mhm.
I actually like to listen while I read because I love those cool voices in my head of
Nice.
Michael Kramer, Kate Redding, awesome
Wait,
audiobook
who are they?
authors, guys.
Nah.
Um, the way they do their voices for the different characters, it is like so amazing that I just can't live without them now, and I have to listen while I read because if I just read the book now without their voices, I feel like I'm missing something. So sometimes I read and then I go back to the audio and catch up, and sometimes I go ahead on the audio and then I catch up with my reading, and sometimes I read simultaneously together. Somehow I make it work. That could delay my reading, but I'm savoring what I read before I move on to the next chunk of the book, if that makes sense.
Indeed.
Are you excited to meet them in July?
Actually, can we
Or
talk
have you
about
already met?
WotCon? Can we talk about WotCon really quick? Can I
Yeah,
do like a promotion for WotCon?
You
please do.
absolutely can.
Okay, so last year I met them, and at
Oh,
the
that's right. You
time,
were there last year.
at
I
the
was in the
time,
rental last year. My bad.
yeah, I have a comment about that. I'll get to that in a minute. So they showed up, and not everybody swarmed around them at the time. I knew who they were. At the time, in my reread of the series, I call myself a born again first time reader or whatever. So I was rereading, and at the time I was in the Great Hunt, and I felt so stupid going to a convention only having read like up to the second book because I forgot most of what I read the first time, 20 years ago.
Mhm.
So I introduced myself, and I talked to them for a couple minutes, and then they were so friendly and nice.
Mhm.
I even ran into Kate in the bathroom once, and she looked at my cosplay, and she's like, "Oh my God, you look amazing." I'm like, "Oh, thank you. It's my first time doing this."
They are
But they
some
were
of the sweetest people you'll ever meet.
sweetest people, and they are party animals. I've heard stories that they stay up later than anybody, and they will drink
Well,
anybody else. You know,
yeah,
Well,
I was gonna say, I do want to be a little bit clear about that. Not like that you're misrepresenting them or anything, but I think it's different and I love it even more in some ways, which is why I want to clarify. I don't feel like Michael and Kate really love to party that much. It's not necessarily that they're party animals, but they will stay up until 4 in the morning, drinking and having intimate conversations with a small group of people, which is still odd. Like, it's still not something I expect out of people who are like, I don't know, famous and famous for this particular kind of thing. But again, as you said, at like WotCon, they would still be up in the lobby, just like sitting with like 8 people. And Michael would just like look at someone and be like, "Could you get me another drink?" And you'd be like, "Yeah, absolutely."
There was some backstory behind this because they had, I believe it was Celtic Mist and maybe Rebecca from reading the pattern. I may be getting this incorrectly, but they went to Kate and said, "How do we get, are you guys going to stay up and drink and have fun with us?" And Kate was like, "I'm in."
Yeah.
But Michael's usually the one who likes to turn in, and crash. And they said, "How do we make that not happen?" And she went, keep a glass of scotch in his hand, just keep it coming all night, and he'll just stay up all night.
Yep.
And that's what they did. And so you had Kate over here talking with people, and you had Michael over here telling stories, and then every once in a while they'd come together and they'd talk to a group, and then they'd split off and talk to more, and they were just amazing. They were so much fun.
Indeed.
And also I just wanted to mention, okay, so last night there was a WotCon info dump on Nabless's live stream. They went over different panels, but that's pretty much all they had time for. They ran out of time. So there's things that people who are going for the first time don't know. So I'm gonna like quickly mention some of those things in case you're
Let's do it.
listening for the first time and you are on the fence about whether or not you want to go to WotCon. So Michael and Kate, they also did some live readings, one at the VIP dinner, and then one during the main stage area on Saturday. And I know the VIP one, I was like literally there like, oh my God, I'm a first time reader. I got to cover my ears, but I can't because it's so good. And yes, I know I haven't gotten to that chapter yet, but the way Kate read that, what was it? The Golden Crane?
Yeah.
Or something? It was still, you feel the emotion coming through. And then similarly, when they did the, what was it? The Weep for Manetheren speech chapter, the next day, oh my God, like from Eye of the World. So at the time I wasn't listening to the audiobooks then, so I kind of missed that. I need to go back and like listen to that, but it is amazing to hear them live. And if you guys haven't listened to the audiobooks yet, do it because it is amazing. It brings the story to life even more than it already is in your own imagination. Okay, so that's about
too. As much, sorry, just sideline real quick. As much as I love Kate and Michael, Rosamund Pike did an absolutely fantastic job with it as well. So
you have a couple of different versions. If you, for some reason, don't love Kate and Michael's voices, first of all, you're a dark friend, but sure, go ahead and listen to Rosamund Pike. And if you don't like Rosamund Pike's voice, also, you're a dark friend, but continuing, I go listen to Kate and Michael.
I will say keeping Rosamund Pike in my head as Miranda Frost and listening to the audiobook would be hilariously like fantastic.
It was good.
You would.
And
oh yeah.
Anyway, so WotCon.
Okay, so this year they're having 4 panels on at the same time. So you have to pick, you know, choose your own adventure. They have 4 tracks. They have a book track, a TV show track, a kind of a creative, I don't know if it's creative / games track, and there's like a 4th one. I can't remember which one it's called.
Creative track, and then I think there's also a games track.
Yeah. So one thing that they didn't mention was, I know last year several content creators had live streams going on either in the lobby or in a separate room. You guys did an awesome job last year. Andrew, I don't know if you were even there or if you were already sick. Okay,
he was there.
I was there for the live stream. That was the last time anybody saw me.
Okay, so you were there, and I remember sitting in the row next to Sean Lodging. He was a first-time reader last year, but he now has finished the books. He was laughing his ass off at you guys, and I was just like watching them laugh as I was watching you, and it was just, you guys, you have to see the Black Tower podcast in person live. They are hilarious.
Oh, it's a whole new experience.
I don't plan on catching COVID this time. Not that I did last time. What?
And Josh and Daniel are extremely good dancers. I had no idea what to expect until I saw them on the dance floor. They knew all the moves to all the classic dances from like the 90s and the early 2000s. I don't know how you guys do it, but it was awesome. Anyways,
you know how most people keep like important phone numbers and like their kids' names and like their schedules and things in their head? Yeah, I have thrown all of that away. None of that is important. Only movie lines and dance moves. Those are all that's in here.
See, I did the same thing, but instead of dance moves, it's just random war and aircraft information.
There you go. See, everybody's got their thing.
Another thing that I wanted to mention for people who can't make it to WotCon, you could still participate. They have 2 virtual options this year.
That is true.
Amazing. They have
Yes.
a standard package, which gets you access to all the panels. You can watch at your leisure, all 24 of them. And then they have a VIP virtual pass, which will get you the same access as a standard. Plus, you get to see special behind the scenes footage, a traveling reporter going around the lobby and talking to people, access to the VIP dinner, streaming. It sounds really cool.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun to watch that stuff back if you're like over here and you don't know what's going on over there and you want to see what's going on. So I'm assuming there will be another FOMOCon, but there's
There
ways for
usually
people to
is.
participate. The fact that they broadcast the panels, I think, is pretty amazing because I kind of
Yeah.
had major FOMO from JordanCon because I wasn't there. I didn't know what was
Yeah.
going on.
Well, and that is definitely one of the things that we actually specifically talked about in our JordanCon v WotCon, like what are the biggest differences. And so JordanCon is definitely getting up to sort of the technological space of being able to go ahead and broadcast everything. And they definitely do broadcast a lot more than they did in many previous years. But they definitely were a convention that was started at a time that was very difficult and not super mainstream available, whereas WotCon started last year, so it was super already technologically mainstream and available to start that way. So we are definitely hoping to get JordanCon up to that level at some point in the future. But the fact that, as you said, the fact that WotCon is already starting on that foot of being able to broadcast all of the panels, being able to broadcast most of the live streams of people at WotCon, the VIP live dinner with the readings and lots of fun things, all of that is super awesome. So definitely I'm gonna parrot Karri here for a moment. If you can't go in person, please consider going virtually. It's actually one of the cooler things to be able to just sit there and watch all 24 panels in a row. I mean, maybe not in a row because that'd be a lot, but like literally people who are there aren't going to be able to do that. That is actually a benefit that you're going to have immediately that attendees won't even be able to do, and that's actually pretty cool. Eventually, I'm sure that that's what I was saying. Eventually, I'm sure the attendees will have the ability to do that once they get home to their own setups, once it's all posted, all of that different stuff. So it's not something that we will never get, but at the same time, you get it day one, we have to wait. Like, so.
A few other reminders about WotCon. Registration closes June 19th, so make sure you get your tickets. The virtual options will be available up through the start of the convention, but if you want to go in person, you have to get your ticket by June 19th because they need to plan. They need to put in a food order because we like to eat together at this convention. So get your tickets. And also the Discord server specific to WotCon will open up on June 14th.
Yeah,
that's
nice.
the week I'm on vacation. That sucks. But anyways, I'll make do. But yeah, so I'm very passionate about WotCon.
As well you should be.
I went with low expectations last year. I thought, no way in hell is anybody going to want to talk to me. I'm boring. Like, why would anybody want to talk to me?
No.
And then I get there, and I start recognizing people. And I'm like, oh my God, I wasn't alone for more than 5 minutes outside of my room. Like, everybody, like if you were sitting alone, somebody would come over and start talking to you. Like, it was just this big, somebody described it as a big family reunion meets a summer summer camp. So like we all love being around each other, and then we're sad when we depart. So it's just an awesome
That is a
experience.
fact.
Yes. Also, I want to throw in one more announcement with Karri's because it's related to these other ones. So it fits here very well. The room block is full as of right this moment. So Nabliss is actually going and getting them to release more rooms for the room block. They are going to be slightly more expensive a night because we're adding them after the fact. But please keep a lookout for that because I he's getting it, he's working on it right now, and it will be available very soon. And they are still really good rates. So it's definitely still worth getting it through the WotCon site and getting it through the room block. A, you'll actually be with the other Wheel of Time nerds, which is awesome. And B, it will be less expensive than a night outside of the room block. So as I said, even if you can't get it right now because they're all full, please keep a lookout. We are working on it, and it might, I think it will probably be done by the time that this is publicly available. But if you are listening live, hold on just a few more days. It should be set up by the time this is public.
Yeah. Something else that should also be done by the time this goes live is an update to one of the more visible policies for WotCon. That is the COVID-19 policy. There is no vaccination requirement. So we were waiting until the expiration of the emergency measures here in the US on May 11th. And then with me moving and stuff, I kind of forgot that we needed to update that. So, but that will be updated here soon. There is no vaccine requirement for this in regards to COVID-19. However, by all means, wear your mask, social distance, bring hand sanitizer, whatever you need to do, whatever you would like to do within obviously reasonable and legal bounds. To feel safe. You know, that doesn't mean like be nasty and like sneeze all over your hands and then like shake everybody else's hand. Like, no.
Indeed, yes.
But
please be kind and be safe. And also we are going to throw out there, because I don't know if anyone else knows, the three of us have actually been on sort of the Watt committees since the beginning. Andrew the most so out of any of us. But we do still absolutely reserve the right to change the rules if the US changes the rules on us and the suggestions. We are absolutely going by the suggested CDC guidelines and things like that. So as of right now, 100%, there are no more, we are out of the emergency. Again, COVID is still a thing, so be safe, be smart. But we are out of the emergency, so we do not have any protocols specific for COVID for this convention as of right now. If that changes for some reason, we will be flexible and change to meet that. So please be aware of that. But as of right now, he is absolutely right. There are no protocols at the moment, so we will not be requiring any additional protocols. So come on down and just be safe and smart.
But you will be required absolutely to wear a definitely protects you from both disease and madness Black Tower podcast wristband. So
absolutely,
that's not officially from WotCon, but it's officially.
If you do not already have a wristband, you will need one. These are protection terangrial.
Yes.
Trust me, if you hang around long enough and see Josh, you will wind up with a wristband. You'll probably wind up with 2 or 3.
Also, I do highly recommend that if by WotCon you would like to go ahead and catch one of us snoozing, if you become a Patreon at a particular level and get one of these bad boys, you can go ahead and coin check the boys at the Black Tower. And if you don't know what that is, we have explained it in many other episodes, and we'll be happy to explain it again. But I don't necessarily want to spend more time during this episode explaining it. But if you know, you know. And if you don't, we will likely have some available for winning at WotCon. I'm actually ever so slightly disappointed because we had one available at JordanCon and no one ever came and claimed it.
It's true.
So do better at WotCon, guys.
Okay.
He who comes with the wine in the live chat says that we need to sticky the rules somewhere. That is a great idea. We will absolutely do that.
Yes.
We will make that available. Maybe on our website. Maybe I'll do like a Patreon page. Ooh, that's a good idea.
That would be smart.
Okay.
Also, it might not actually be a bad idea to go ahead and sticky that somewhere where everyone can see, just in case someone who's not
like on our main
Patreon
website
has gotten a coin. Because there are definitely a handful of people who have gotten coins who are not our patrons. So
no, that's true. That's true.
So, anyway,
well, that
Karri,
I'll put it on the main website. That way it's accessible to everybody.
2 more WotCon things to say really quick. And
Two
Perfect.
more
About
WotCon
WotCon
things.
forever, so I apologize. Okay, number one,
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
this is for Wolf Brother. Everybody, the convention is run by fans for fans,
Yes.
and it doesn't run itself. So we need
Mhm.
volunteers. So even if you can volunteer for one tiny chunk of your convention schedule, like a morning or an afternoon, they need volunteers in all areas of the convention. So because I won a free ticket this year, I actually signed up today to volunteer for 2 time slots
Yay.
because I feel like I'm
Nice.
a pro
Thank you
now.
very
I've
much.
done this. I've done this once before. I'm a pro. So there's that. And then the last thing I want to say, because like I said, I can talk about WotCon forever. You know, I love it so much. I'm giving you guys an exclusive announcement. Not shared anywhere
Excellent.
on social media yet. I'm going to be on the first time reader panel.
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
That's
I
awesome.
There you
got
go.
asked-
For all of you
I got
tuned in
asked
right now,
to
you know
be
your
on that.
first scheduled item that you got to put on your WotCon schedule.
So yeah, it's scary and exciting, but you know, we'll figure it out.
You're gonna knock it out.
No, I'm sure you're going to do a great job.
All right. Well, so normally what we do here, Karri, is we give our final thoughts and we wrap it up and we call it a night. I want to give you the chance. I know you've been plugging WotCon, which we're grateful for. I want to give you the chance, just really quick, you know, where you're at of the books. Just kind
Yeah,
of give
so
us a basic summation.
a few theories and a few questions I
Yes.
have.
Nice.
So, you know, I will tell people because I'm very curious and sometimes I can't take it anymore and I don't have patience. Don't Google
We've all
things,
been there.
people. Don't Google things. I Googled the Black Aja once. Don't do it. You'll know things that you don't
Go
want
to
to
the
know.
greatblight.com.
That's a good
That's
resource.
a spoiler-friendly glossary.
Yep.
Yes, and some glossaries will take you to the point where you are in the books and they only release things related to that.
Yep.
So here are my thoughts. And this is obviously spoiler through the end of Fires of Heaven. So Moraine and Lanfear went through the doorway and it melted. I've watched enough crime shows on TV. If I don't see a body, there's no way she could be dead. All that happened is you removed that door from that particular alternate universe, reality, whatever, but there has to be another way to access wherever she is. I just don't know yet.
I do want to throw out there, I love your thoughts. I do.
Love your tenacity there.
But I do want to throw out there is a book series that came out not too awful long ago, and this is definitely a spoiler warning for the Harry Potter books. There were a heck of a lot of people that said the same thing about Sirius Black going through that doorway with the curtain in Harry Potter, and his ass never came back. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So while you're absolutely I appreciate your thought process, and there are plenty of stories where you're right, where there's not a body and and something, fucky happens. We have at least one series out there where there's some weirdness and ain't nobody ever come back.
I'm just saying that when we get to Fires of Heaven and the TV show, and they get down to we get to use our one F-bomb, if they don't use it with Lanfear popping out and going, "Who the fuck is Avienda?" They have sorely, sorely missed an opportunity.
Or conversely, I would also really appreciate it if Lanfear comes out holding Kadir's skin and goes, "Who's Avienda?" And Rand just looks at her and goes, "Fuck."
Oh,
and then,
fuck.
That would also
I like
good.
it.
Sorry, continue, Karri.
What was I saying?
Talking about theories and questions.
Fires of Heaven. Okay, so Fires of Heaven. So the other thing was I had my first real experience with the unreliable narrator when Matt comes bursting into the chamber of Rand and saying, "Oh my God, Morghese is dead." I was like, "No, she's not. She just ran off. She escaped." And by the way, that chapter where she broke through the compulsion, I thought that was one of my favorite chapters. It was really cool. She ran off with a few hooligans from the town. Like, she's still alive. I don't know what she's up to, but she's not dead.
Wow, calling
And
Basil
so-
Gill a hooligan.
Poor Talavor,
How
just a
dare
hooligan.
you?
then-
Indeed.
My final thought on Fires of Heaven is the part where Rand goes into the dream world in the living flesh. That was a
Mm.
shocker to me. I wasn't expecting that.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
That was a pretty cool sequence, because on the other hand, you got the girls who are already in the dream world, and then you got Moghedien doing her mischief, and it was just a really cool ending. But I felt like the book
Nice.
had multiple endings.
It's definitely one of the ones that kind of feels like it could have ended 3 times. I don't disagree with you. And there's a lot of epic stuff going on, which is part of the reason that it's like, okay, well, we want to tie up each of these things, which means that it feels like there are 3 endings. But yeah, no,
True.
you're totally right. I completely I feel that.
Yeah, so
I just love the
Um,
symbolism of whenever they come back in right after, it's either at the end of the Far Snows or the very start of the next chapter, where they come back through the gateway, and the closing the gateway cuts off like the tip of the Shan Chan spear. But then you also had like Rand, Matt, and Parent at Falma, like
Mhm.
summoning Matt summoning the Heroes of the Horn and then following Rand and everything, and him fighting Ishmael, basically breaking off the tip of the Shan Chan invasion spear.
Yep.
So
No, it's good stuff.
Symbolism.
well, that was pretty neat.
yeah, I like that chapter
Symbolism.
too.
The word you're
when-
looking for is symbolism.
when they got out of the igloo and they were like, "Oh my God, they're in." I'm like, "Oh my God, they're in Sanchan country." Like, what? How did this happen? Like, I wasn't expecting.
You're in
that.
Shan Chan country now.
So that kind of the world building just kind of exploded at that point, and
Yeah.
there's obviously a lot I haven't uncovered yet. And
Mhm.
RJ takes his time, but when he gets to something good, he like blows it out of the ballpark.
Yep.
And this is the thing that's I find so interesting. I lost my train of thought. So man, I don't know what I was gonna say. RJ,
You just love
world
this stuff so
building,
much.
Can I ask you a question, Carrie, while you're trying to go ahead and
Yes.
put yourself thought back together? Are you, as a first-time reader, aware of the fact that canonically the Shan Chan in Robert Jordan's head had Texan accents?
I heard about that.
Good. I am very glad. I will not rest until every Wheel of Time reader knows that according to RJ's thought process, canonically, the Shan Chan have Texas accents.
Have you heard our headcanon that they now get stereotypical Canadian accents?
Is that our headcanon?
Oh, we talked about it in one of the episodes.
Yeah,
It
we
was
had
funny as
a
hell,
whole
so,
episode on it.
Yeah.
So-
Nova Scotia.
They're not nice enough to be given Canadian.
That's what makes it so funny.
So I have a question to the universe. Why do we love Wheel of Time so much? What is it about this series that is different from other series that we always elevate it above anything else? Why are we so emotionally attached to fictional characters? Like,
Andrew, take it away.
Yeah.
Actually answer the question. I think
Oh,
you'll
yeah,
probably feel a lot of what's going on in Josh and I's hearts right now.
I think it resonates so well, and we get so attached to it and are so involved with it, because no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what you've experienced in life, there is more than just a little bit of the Wheel of Time that resonates deeply with anyone. You may not resonate with Matt, you may not resonate with Perrin, you may not resonate with Rand, you might only resonate with like Herod Fell, or you might only resonate with men, or you might only resonate with pick a character. There's like 2,700 of them. that
Named.
name, yeah, that
Yeah, right.
you can kind of follow along with a lot of these characters. And if nothing else, you can follow along with the thought processes that all of these characters use and have to an extent. So it's a world where you get to see from a kind of overarching standpoint that isn't 100% guaranteed to be right, because you mentioned the unreliable narrator, which is very much a very serious thing that Robert Jordan did very well. But you get to tag along, and you get to find these characters that you either really enjoy or that you really feel familiar with, or that you're like, hey, I see some of myself in them, and you get to follow their journey, and you get to see the growth or the conflict resolution that the characters go through, if they get to go through it. And to some degree, I think it has a kind of symbiotic feeling to the people going through it and reading it with the characters, that, as you know, if you resonate with Rand and you see Rand struggling with different things going on in his world, and if he gets to a point where he can resolve whatever the issue is, then I think you get a little bit of that serotonin boost of resolving
Catharsis.
issues. Yeah. And you get a little bit of that kind of like extra nudge to like, well, look how bad things were for this character, you know, and look at how they fought through it. And it kind of emboldens us to go through it. But it also, in part, opens up a massive array of ways to start conversations about everything from like the simplest topic of just miscommunication with friends, to the more complex arguments and the more complex discussions that we have in our world. But I think also a non-negligible massive part of it is the majority of the Wheel of Time fandom that by and large is very welcoming, very understanding, very warm, especially to new readers and new members to the community, that very much are open to these conversations and open to trying not to spoil all the first time readers and that kind of stuff. So you get both this in-world very immersive experience, but once you find the fandom as well, if you're fortunate enough to do that, you get this very real, very interpersonal connection that is going to be intimately tied to the same book series that you feel this kind of in-series connection to.
Yep. I also just want to throw in there another thing that I've always felt to be really important about this story. And one of the things that elevates it to me is that it is a classic story of good and evil. There is a big bad, and they are basically the embodiment of chaos. They are basically the embodiment of evil and whatnot. But at the same time, there are so many characters in the story that are just trying to do their best. And so many of them get so complicated because the world that RJ made was incredibly complicated. And the people in the world that populate it are incredibly complicated. And so when you read these characters that you resonate with, and they're going through so much complex stuff, I think it really allows people to forgive themselves for their complicatedness and learn from these fictional characters' complicated natures and circumstance and things like that, and appreciate that where they are is not necessarily where they need to be. As Andrew sort of said about dealing with hard things, and see how this character came out on the other side and things like that. But again, the bad characters aren't always all bad, and the good characters aren't always all good, even though at the end of the day it is sort of that classic story of all good and all evil. There's so much more to it. And I think that that's one of the other reasons that it has stuck out to me so much through my life personally, is the Robert Jordan made such a complex and creative world that everybody feels super real. They feel very honest and very human.
I will say
and that's
that
one of the cool things.
I will say that it finally, the Wheel of Time, especially book one, finally allowed me to forgive myself for turning that badger loose in first grade.
As
So,
it should have. Because
yeah.
you too can also be a great character by the third book in your story.
Yeah. It
Even
wasn't on the
after
village green.
being the class clown in book 1 and finding a
wasn't-
dagger.
It wasn't on the village green, but there were 2 kids in my my first grade class with last names Village and Green. So
I will say
This is why
for
we
me,
can have nice things.
I will say for me, the resonation with me was always
soul resonance. Sorry,
you can so resonant. Just
sorry, I had to make
resonations.
a Soul Eater reference.
Of course you did.
It was always for me. I always used to tell people, look, this is a book series story,
There you
unlike any other. There are characters you will absolutely love one chapter, and that same character you will hate them the very next chapter.
Sometimes.
But it's because they're people, and
Mhm.
you have a broad spectrum of personalities and cultures and differences of opinion. And as I've grown, as I thought about this a lot, I've been able to refine that idea into a simple concept that RJ does this amazing job of building an amazing fantasy world where it's magic and it's, destiny, and it's the battle between good and evil, and it's this and it's that.
He said,
But he does it in a
it's
way
magic,
that is so
Whoa,
relatable and human. So you get the idea that this is yes, Rand is the prophesied potential savior of the world. We don't know if he's going to save the world or destroy the world, but he's also just a regular person trying to figure out what that means. And I really, really love that. I love how that's sort of spilled. You assholes.
That was one of the greatest quotes I have ever heard Andrew make on this show. That was so good.
All right. Well,
But yeah,
we have got to kind of wrap it there. Karri, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for
Agreed.
sharing
Thank you
your
for having me.
of
thoughts,
course.
feelings,
Before that,
and loves.
do you have because I feel like this is also a really good way to leave it off, things that have happened end of Fires of Heaven and before that you're waiting on answers to or to be resolved as you move into Lord of Chaos or beyond?
She did already mention
Pick-
one.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that like you're really like,
I-
okay, I want this to be resolved?
I'm really rooting for Nynaeve and Lan to be together. The fact that his bond
Who?
transferred to
Nynaeve. She's looking for the
Transfer-
Nynaeve ship, guys.
transfer to somebody else. We don't know much about that yet, but it was like, will they find each other again? I want to know more
Okay.
about Matt and the dice talking in his head. More about how he was impacted by I'm probably gonna say this wrong. Elfin and Elfin.
The
Fox did it good.
Aelfin and
Perfect.
the Eelfin.
Nailed
Yep.
it.
Is Rand gonna go mad in this book that I'm about to read? And when am I gonna meet the Black Tower? Like, I feel embarrassed that I went to WotCon
July.
last year. I was surrounded by a lot of guys dressed up as Aishaman, and I'm like, I haven't met you guys yet in the books.
Well,
Um,
I will say this. Lord of Chaos.
Yes, and that's
Yep.
why I know you keep hinting that I'm gonna enjoy this one. So,
That is very true.
It
just
is
still
very
trying to
true.
get through the prologue at this point.
You can do it.
Yes,
We believe in you.
indeed. Someday
Well,
you'll be out of the prologue. It may
thank
not be
you.
this day, but
It
someday.
is not this day. All right. Well, thank you so much. We are so happy to have had you. Did you guys like what you saw tonight? If you do, leave a comment below. Maybe we'll have some other first time readers on as well.
First
Karri,
readers.
we are going to see you in July at WotCon.
Absolutely.
Big hug from all of us coming straight to you. If you guys do come to WotCon, be sure to come by and say hello to Karri. She's super fun and super awesome. Yeah, that's it. That's the show, guys. Like, let us know what you thought in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Go to our website, blacktowerpod.com. Thanks for tuning in for this week's Dose of Madness. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you leave here just a little bit more insane than you were when you first got here. And from all of us here at the Black Tower, I have been your Soroban Mahale, Josh.
And I've been that there Bajan Mahale, Andrew.
And I have been your Amin Khan Mahale, Daniel. And again, from all of us here at the Black Tower, big thank you to Karri. We look forward to seeing you in July. Thanks for coming on and talking to us. Thanks for anybody who joined us for this first time reader spoiler light episode of the Black Tower podcast. And definitely hope to see all of you at WotCon and or next year at JordanCon as well. Have a lovely rest of the morning. And in case we don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
WotCon.com. Get your fucking tickets.
Bye, guys.
WotCon.
You've been having so much trouble just fitting